Welcome, football fans, gridiron gamblers, and BLV believers. It's Mitch here, back with another week of my NFL picks. Straight up and versus the spread. I pick every single NFL game, every single NFL week. And I've been hearing from you guys. You guys have been taking my picks more serious this year than ever. And maybe it's my fault that I've been having too much fun recklessly throwing around upsets. Okay? So maybe I've just got to hone in and we've got to go. And we've got to go full on in week 10. We're almost there. We're almost getting to Thanksgiving. So it means serious football is about to arrive. It's been a wacky up and down season all year. Sometimes the weeks have made sense. Sometimes they have not. Sometimes the results have made sense and sometimes they have not. And speaking on results, I know that an election just took place and I'm Canadian, okay? But I realize that a lot of my Americans out there are watching this video. I just want to say I'm focused on ball. I'm focused on the NFL. I'm focused on picking these games. So regardless of whether you're happy or you're sad about the election, please just leave it politic-free in the chat and in the comments. We don't need it, okay? So Gronk spike the like button, subscribe for football and only football, and let's have some fun. Let's talk about these games, and let's get to another week of NFL picks here on the BLV. All right, first of all, we got to recap what happened last week, which was probably a historic week for the Bottom Line View in terms of wackiness and results. Okay, we've got a really good straight-up week of 10-5, I believe it was, overall, on the week last week, but an awful spread week where we went 4-11. I don't think I've ever had a week like that in my entire life picking games where we were so right about who would win, but so wrong about how the spreads would be playing out. And it's basically because favorites right now are just covering at a crazy rate. So it tanked our spread record to 68-67. Somehow we're hanging on. We're above 500 thanks to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers covering an outrageous 9-point spread against the Kansas City Chiefs. But we are still humming straight up, doing pretty well there. We're getting to a better place. So I think this week we're going to keep it simple. Best bets, we went 3-3. We could have easily gone 4-2 or better if Brian Daboll knew what an extra point was, but we won't talk about that. Let's get to the games. Let's begin with Thursday Night Football. Big Al says, man, that was a rough week spread-wise. It absolutely was. It absolutely was, but we're about to nail it in week 10. So if you haven't already, Gronk spike the like button. And if you're new, and if you like me, you can subscribe if you want. Also, if you're wondering, why can't I access the channel, the chat right now? Why can't I talk? It's because you have to be a YouTube member of the Bottom Line View, just as Daniel Barry, just as Stephanie, just as Ben are. That's why they're commenting. Okay, so become a member, access it. $3 Canadian a month. All right, let's begin. The Cincinnati Bengals at the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore is favored by a hefty 6.5, a near full touchdown and extra point over Joe Burrow, who just put up 5, not 3, not 4, 5 touchdowns against the Las Vegas Raiders. This is going to be hopefully a good Thursday Night Football game. The Bengals do have a couple injuries that could impact this game. Orlando Brown, their left tackle, did not play last week. He was limited at practice on Wednesday. It does appear that he might make his return for Thursday. T. Higgins is doubtful for the game. I do think he will be out of this game. So another week without T. Higgins, but the Bengals have been able to morph. It feels like their offense has become a little bit more short passing based, a little bit more quick passing based, with T. Higgins not in the offense. Mike Gesicki has taken on a bigger role in the offense with T. Higgins not out there. And they will have, Yossi Voss, They will have Chase Brown getting a lot of the work out of the backfield. Khalil Herbert maybe making an appearance as they traded for him at the trade deadline to replace Zach Moss. I would expect Brown to get a lot of the work in this game. And I think this is going to be a lot of passing attempts for Joe Burrow. I think they're going to throw the ball. I think they're going to try to air it out. And I think they're going to try to attack this secondary of the Ravens off a short week that's pretty susceptible to giving up big passing days. That's their best chance to win this game. But the game's basically going to come down to how many stops can the Bengals get, because their defense has been not necessarily good this year. I think they've been anything but that for a majority of the season. They've played well against bad offenses like the Raiders, like the Giants. They've had their moments this year. I did feel like in that first Ravens game, the Bengals should have won. Game was in Cincinnati. Bengals should have won that game. They absolutely blew it. I think at one point they were up by double digits twice, okay? So, yeah, that's not exactly ideal. They pulled a 49ers, but they also had a chance to win that game with a botched snap where they set themselves up with a field goal attempt and they missed. So there was also that. Can the Bengals upset the Ravens here? It's in Baltimore. It's a short week. You usually lean towards the home team. You lean towards the favorite on a Thursday night. It's hard for me to imagine that the Bengals are going to slow down this machine of an offense that the Ravens have right now. They're running the ball. They're stressing teams out running the ball, which is opening up just potent downfield passing. Maybe Deontay Johnson a little bit more involved this week than previously. Maybe Zay Flowers has another huge game here. No Isaiah Likely, I don't think, but Mark Andrews has been playing better. Derrick Henry, I think Mitchell is back at running back to give them another dimension to their running game. Lamar has been beat up kind of awkwardly. I don't know how, it didn't look like it mattered against the Broncos at all. He had a perfect passer rating, but maybe there's something bugging him. I'm not exactly sure what it is. So I look at this game, and these two teams are very familiar with each other. I think both offenses should find success. I'm hoping the game will be very close, and I'm hoping that I actually want the Bengals to win this game, but I'm going to put my bias aside because I want the Bengals to be in the playoffs because I think it's better for the NFL if we have another great quarterback in the playoffs instead of like a boring wild card team. Like, no offense to the Broncos, but I'd rather have the Bengals in there than the Broncos. I will take the Bengals with the points, but I'm going to take the Ravens to win. I think the Bengals will keep this competitive. I think that they will be able to move the ball. And with a 6.5 point spread, I think that they can always backdoor this. Like, I think there's always the opportunity for them to squeak it in at the end. Maybe, let's say they're down by 13 in the fourth quarter. They get a last possession. They could score a touchdown and backdoor cover. So I think even with the lead, given the Ravens' state of their pass defense, their pass rush, their coverage, there's always the possibility that this is covered by Joe Burrow just making magic happen at the end of the game. Or maybe this is just a back and forth shootout. The total is at 53, which is an insane number. So as long as the Bengals do a marginal job against their run game, I feel like they should be able to hang in this game. So even without T. Higgins, I think the game should be close. I'll take the Ravens to win at home on the short week with a healthier overall team, but I'll take the Bengals to cover this game. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if they won, but I definitely feel like the Ravens have been the much better team, much more dominant team. So I kind of have to pick them here. So that's the first pick on Thursday night. We're going to go with favorite to win, but underdog to cover, something that didn't work out last week. But this is a pretty big spread, so I'll take the points with Joe Burrow. Let's get to the Sunday games. Ben said, I just don't want the Bengals to miss the playoffs, and he says exactly about the Broncos not wanting them to be in the playoffs. Big Al's got Ravens 31, Bengals 24. Baltimore wins and covers. Okay, and he says, happy hump day, baby. That means picks. Rob's also in the chat. Caesar's in the chat. Ben says Bengals are desperate. He also thinks the Bengals are going to win. So there you go. He thinks that Joe Shiesty's going to come up with the dub. Stephanie says, hey, Mitch. What's up, Stephanie? Thank you so much for joining the chat. Jordan Hunter, the guitar-loving teen, in the chat as well. Shout out to you guys. Thank you for joining me in the chat. Let's get to Sunday. First game on Sunday is an absolutely iconic matchup. We once saw Tom Brady fly to Germany and pick up a win. We've also seen Patrick Mahomes fly to Germany and pick up a win. And 2 years in a row, the NFL gave you Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes in Germany. And now they have given you the next best thing. That is Daniel Jones and Bryce Young. Yes. Now, somehow in an NFL game, the Giants are favored by 6. And I've even seen a 6.5 out there for this game. I don't know how that is even possible. But the thing that we know about these international games is that the favorite tends to win and the favorite tends to cover pretty significantly because usually just the better team arrives in Germany and they win and they dominate. I also look at this from a matchup standpoint. The Panthers won last week, which makes me less inclined to think that they're actually going to cover this week or win this week, because why do they even care? Like, honestly, like, they beat the Saints. They're probably still living off their Super Bowl win last week. Bryce Young is still terrible, okay? Their offense is still terrible. They traded players. They do have Jalen Coker, and they do have Xavier Legette, rookie receivers out there. Adam Thielen still not back. Brooks still not back, but Chuba Hubbard's been good. The O-line is solid for Bryce. And this kind of comes down to, I think, if the Giants' front seven is able to dominate and get some sacks and pressures on Bryce early in the game, I think he might fold it up like a tent at halftime. But I also feel like at the same time, the Panthers have been pretty good on the O-line, so maybe they can hold up and they can make some plays. But Bryce Young isn't exactly a deep ball passer, and that's kind of been the weakness of the Giants, has been their run defense and their explosive play defense through the air. So I feel like Panthers won't really be able to make, I think, too many explosive passes, but perhaps they're able to run the ball. On the other side, I think the Giants should pretty much get what they want on this Panthers defense. I mean, we've talked about their effort level. We've talked about their tackling level. We've talked about their ability in general to stop the run, stop the pass, rush the passer. I think Daniel Jones should have a pretty good day here. Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson have been great all year long. And Tyrone Tracy is the next great running back in the NFL. I think he's going to have a huge statement game in Germany. I'm going to take the Giants to win and the Giants to cover. Maybe I am off my rocker, but I actually think the Giants minus 6.5. I think they'll win by a touchdown. I'm going to say like 24-17 or like 27-20 for the Giants. I think they'll win by a full touchdown. So anything under a touchdown, I'm going to take the G-Men in Germany. We have a couple people in the chat mentioning that this is worse than the Treaty of Versailles from Jordan Hunter. They also mentioned that Machine Gun Kelly may be the highlight of the game. And Ben says, what MGK got to do with it? He doing a show or something? Yeah, he's doing the halftime show. He is actually. I assume there'll be some rap. I assume there'll be some punk rock in MGK's set list there, Ben. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, maybe we'll get a good game here, but it's between two awful football teams. I think I've just liked what I've seen from the Giants more frequently, especially considering I think their run game has been better as of late, and they hung in there against the Commanders. They definitely probably could have covered there, but they didn't. So I'll take the Giants. Yeah, pretty dull game. I probably will skip this one. I'm not gonna lie. Maybe I'll watch it. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe I'll skip it. You guys let me know in the chat if you're actually gonna watch this game. All right, next up, we've got the Denver Broncos at the Kansas City Chiefs. Ben's Chiefs are fresh off an overtime victory over his favorite quarterback, Baker Mayfield. The Chiefs are laying 8.5. Another huge number for the Chiefs at home. But this one is kind of an awkward one, in my opinion, from a spread standpoint, because this is probably the best defense the Chiefs have played in a while. Like, they've played some pretty weak defenses and they've been able to take advantage, but this is also probably the worst quarterback that they've played in a while. And here come the Bo Nix lovers in the chat. Just going to look this up real quick. Like, the Chiefs' schedule, they have kind of been inflating, I think, their offensive production. Like, people have been very high on their offense lately. We talked about how bad the Tampa defense is. They looked very good in that game with D-Hop. The Raiders defense gave up like 100 points to the Broncos. The Niners, I guess, are in line with the similar, defense to the Broncos, but the Niners also played really well on defense in that game. It was more so Purdy just kind of pissing himself. The Saints, they're an awful defense. So, yeah, it's kind of been a minute since they've played. Outside of the Niners, they played the Chargers. That game was 17-10. So this game kind of screams like a defensive game, in my opinion. I think similar to last year's matchups. The Broncos did actually beat the Chiefs in Kansas City last year. So I could see Sean Payton and this coaching staff, which I respect, keeping this one pretty competitive. The question will be, can the Broncos really just manufacture enough points to cover the spread? Because I'm just thinking about how they may go about this. Maybe they use the mobility of Bo Nix on some play action stuff, get their tight ends involved. Maybe they throw some screen passes, things like that. But I don't necessarily see this being a huge Courtland Sutton game. I don't necessarily think this is going to be Bo Nix is going to be dropping back and throwing against tight window coverage of the Chiefs. I don't necessarily see that. So I think they're going to have to manufacture a lot of offense here. But as long as their defense can keep them in it, they've got a good pass rush. I think they've got a really deceptive front seven that can get after Mahomes. The Chiefs' run game has been really consistent in terms of plugging away and getting yardage, but not a lot of explosive yards. I think the Broncos should do a solid job with that. And this should also be DeAndre Hopkins' toughest test so far as a Chief, as he probably will be taking on Pat Surtain on the other side. So this could be more the Travis Kelce type of game. I think the Broncos, after an embarrassing loss against the Ravens, I think they do bounce back to a certain degree and make this one competitive against a familiar opponent and a familiar offense. I think it helps that Vance Joseph has seen this offense plenty in the past. So I'm going to take Denver plus 8.5, but I'll take the Chiefs to win the game. I don't think the Chiefs will drop 2 years in a row to the Broncos at home. I think they did lose at home last time. Maybe it was in Denver. I can't remember. I think I was actually at an Adam Sandler comedy show last year for this game. So I don't even really remember it. All I remember was that the Chiefs couldn't really score. Mahomes was sick. I think I was. I don't really remember. But regardless, the Chiefs. Or was that the game they won? I don't remember, but both these games were ugly last year. Anyways, I'm going to take the Broncos to cover, the Chiefs to win. Because the Chiefs, they'll do enough on offense. They'll do enough. They'll dink and dunk their way down the field, but I don't see them having a lot of explosives here. And I do think they're going to have a couple series where the Broncos pass rush is a little overwhelming for them, but I think their defense will probably win them this game. So I'm going to go Chiefs to win, Broncos to cover. Pretty simple there. Pretty basic. Jordan says, taking the Broncos is what I'd say if I were brain dead. 12-9 Chiefs. Jordan Hunter says, you were streaming. I remember talking about how the Chiefs got reamed. Oh, okay. Maybe I was. I don't remember. I just remember, they play twice a year, so I'm probably just getting confused. Big Alice says Chiefs 27, Broncos 20, so a little bit higher scoring than I think. Ben says, I don't think this little Bo Peep is going to do well against Spags. Yeah, I don't necessarily either, which is kind of scaring me. I kind of want to make the Broncos a best bet because it's a divisional game coming off an embarrassing loss. The Chiefs are on a short week. Familiarity. I kind of want to take 8.5 as a best bet. But I'm a little scared of Bo Nix. I'm just a little scared of backing Bo Nix against Spags and this defense. So, yeah. Next up, we've got the New England Patriots with the better rookie quarterback at the Chicago Bears. I've seen 6. I've seen 6.5. You might be able to get a 6.5 here if you want to back the Patriots. If you want to back the Bears, try to find a 6. Maybe let it wait until it drops below 6, I would say, if you want to back the Bears, because I think there's a possibility it could be at 5.5. But I would say the Bears are a very injured team right now. I think that's something that's flown under the radar. Against the Cardinals, they were missing multiple defensive linemen. Andrew Billings, I think, has now been ruled out for the year. Montez Sweat was hurt against the Cardinals. That was an obvious, huge loss for them. And their run defense was really bad against the Cardinals, and they gave up a ton of big plays. On the other side, I think their tackles are beat up too, so look out for that. The Bears are just, a beat up at the line of scrimmage, specifically. They do have a couple of injuries in the secondary as well, like Jaquan Brisker at safety, but the Bears are beat up. The Patriots have been beat up all year, so you kind of never know who's going to be in or out for this team on the offensive line or in the secondary and all that sort of stuff. But I don't think anything really changes for the Patriots. If anything, they might be a little bit healthier in this game, but I think I'm going to take the Bears to bounce back and win, but I'm going to take the points. And the simple point is here, I think that the Patriots have the better quarterback by a pretty wide margin. I also think that the Patriots have the better offense in this game. That might be crazy to say, but the Bears offense has been downright dreadful. I mean, they couldn't move the ball against the Commanders. They couldn't move the ball against the Cardinals. They can't block a soul. And with the current injuries on the offensive line for the Bears, I think that also makes it possible that the Patriots defense actually makes a few plays in this game. Because if you've been watching the Patriots, their defense is absolutely putrid. But the game's in Chicago, so it's at home. It's going to be a tough environment for Drake May and the Patriots. But they played in Tennessee last week against a really good defense. I would say in line with the Bears, two very good defenses. But the Titans were healthier. And the Titans offense, we'll talk about them a little bit later, but they've been kind of deceptively playing a lot better. While Chicago, I just feel like they're struggling. They're struggling in drop back pass. Their run game's inconsistent. I'm going to take Chicago because they're a lot more talented and they're kind of desperate. And this is much more of a must win than the Patriots, because the Patriots, the Patriots suck. So like they don't really care if they win or lose. Everything about their team is about Drake May and his evolution. I think he's like the first quarterback to put up like 700 passing yards, 200 rushing yards, a certain amount of touchdowns in the first 4 starts of a rookie's career. So shout out to Drake May. The propaganda will continue with Drake May on this channel. But there's really not a lot else for New England. I mean, they got Demario Douglas. They can't run the ball worth a shit. They got Hunter Henry. That's about it. Okay. But that being said, I mean, Caleb has literally been like the worst quarterback in the league over the past like month. He's ranking like 32nd in category, like 31st. He's playing worse than Bryce Young the last couple of weeks. So it's hard for me to imagine that the Bears can really win with margin here, to be honest. So I'll take the Bears to win because they have the much better defense. They're at home. They're the better team. They probably have better coaches, which is extremely sad for the Patriots. But I'll take the Patriots because they have the better quarterback and I think the more functional offense right now. So yeah, that's the basic pick. Rob says the Bears will cover in spite of Eberflus. Jordan says Drake May legacy game incoming. And Big Al says Bears 20, Patriots 17. Chicago wins, Patriots cover. All right. Next up, the 49ers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Guys, if you haven't already, Gronk spiked the like button. I'm going to throw a little spoiler out there for you guys here. This game, you could have guessed it, will be a best bet. I'm taking the 49ers to win and to cover. I feel very good about these two teams. I often get these two teams very right. I know them very well. I think the Niners are, okay, so this is a good spot for them, and this is a bad spot for Tampa. So first of all, Tampa's coming off of a short week against the Chiefs where they played in overtime, and their defense played a ton of snaps. I think they kind of poured their heart out in that game, and they still ended up a loser. And you could tell Baker knew they were going to lose as soon as the Chiefs got the ball in overtime, and he hung his head in the air, and he couldn't believe it. The Bucs could have won that game pretty easily, and a lot of people would argue that Todd Bowles should have went for 2. But my main thing is this is a situational spot big time for the Niners. So first of all, the Niners have a bye week. The Niners are getting back potentially the best player on earth in Christian McCaffrey. Jawan Jennings will be back, as well as Debo is healthy. They added a couple pieces to their defense. I think they could get a couple pieces of their defense back as well. So they're just getting a lot healthier. They're off a bye week. Kyle Shanahan's record in November is pretty ridiculous overall. The Bucs are very beat up on defense. They don't have any receivers. And yeah, it's in Tampa Bay, but it's a short week compared to a team coming off a bye. So, and then you also throw in the fact that you looked at these two teams and how they've played recently, matching up. Like Shanahan has pretty much owned Todd Bowles in these recent matchups. I think Brock Purdy had a perfect passer rating against them last year, and they played last season. So I hate this Bucs defense. They give up way too much in the middle of the field, and that's where the Niners want to throw the ball. And if McCaffrey's back, I could imagine that their run game will be much more efficient. I could see a world where the Bucs are able to move the ball through the passing game a little bit and maybe get a little bit of balance going early in the game with how Liam Cohen has been functioning as the offensive coordinator. I think they've been very smart in terms of their play calling, in terms of their run and pass balance. I think Baker is playing really, really well. And I like how their offensive line overall is performing. But this is going to be a Niners team that is very fired up. And I honestly think that they kind of match up better with the Bucs than the Chiefs defense did, just because the Chiefs, they kind of give up a lot of plays to the tight end, and Cade Otton is the Bucs' best player on offense right now, and Fred Warner is on the Niners, and they're very good against tight ends. So if anything, I kind of think this is kind of like a worse matchup, which is weird to say because the Chiefs definitely have a better defense than the Niners, but it's kind of one of those matchup things, and styles make fights, as we say in the NFL. So yeah, a lot of things point to the Niners to win and Niners to cover. So I'm going to take the 49ers. Hopefully Christian McCaffrey is back here. Niners to win, Niners to cover here. Big game for the Niners, definitely, in terms of they need this game if they want to win their division. So I think they get it. Rob says Niners win and cover. Jennings and Pearsall will be double trouble. Big Al says 30-17 49ers. They win and cover. Bang, bang, Niner gang. Shout out to E40 and Miss Becca. Shout out to Becca today. I know she's having a tough time at work. All right, next up, the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Washington Commanders. Low-key one of the games of the week. I like the Steelers here. I know that Washington fans, I've been rising on the Commanders. I have the Commanders higher in my power rankings than the Steelers, so that would make logical sense that I would take the Commanders, and they're at home. But the Steelers are coming off a bye, and Mike Tomlin is the best underdog in football as a coach. I think that the Steelers match up well with the Commanders for a lot of different reasons. First of all, the Steelers defensively, when you look at who the Commanders have played offense or from a defensive standpoint, they have been beating up on really bad defenses. Like we'll pull up their schedule, who they've played, who Jaden Daniels and this offense have played, and they played phenomenal. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but we're trying to predict games and project what's going to happen. So you look at, we could go through the entire schedule, to be honest. So they played the Bucs. We just talked about their defense. They lost, actually, by 17 points in week 1. They played the Giants twice, the Bengals with none of their defensive linemen on Monday night. They lit them up. They played the Cardinals, who are not a great defense. They played the Browns, and that was actually deceptive because they didn't have that many yards in that game, but they scored a lot of points. They played the Panthers. They're terrible on defense. They played the Ravens. We've talked about how they're susceptible, but that was kind of a rough game for the Commanders in terms of their offensive performance. They played, I talked about Giants twice, and they played the Bears, in which they scored 13 points before a Hail Mary, or 12 points before a Hail Mary. So, yeah, I think the Commanders have kind of been living off of playing really bad defenses. I will say, though, this could be a matchup of two frauds, because if you look at the other side, the Steelers have been playing a lot of easy teams as well. We go through it in terms of who their defense has been playing. They played Kirk Cousins off the Achilles in week 1. They played the Broncos in week 2. They played the Chargers when Herbert got hurt in the game in week 3, and their tackles got hurt as well. They played the Colts and conceded 27 points. They played the Cowboys and conceded 20 points and lost. They destroyed the Raiders. They suck. And they destroyed the Jets. Their offense is pretty mid. And they destroyed the Giants. So honestly, they didn't really destroy the Giants, but they gave up a lot of rushing yards in that game. So this kind of could be a fraud matchup here between offense and defense. I do think the Steelers are a pretty real defense, though, in my opinion. I think the fraud of them might just be who they've played. But also on top of that, I think the Steelers will be prepared because I think they know how to play these type of quarterbacks. Who do they usually play very good against? That's Lamar Jackson, right? Who is the quarterback that is most replicatable to Jaden Daniels? It's Lamar Jackson's. The Steelers kind of own Lamar Jackson, and at least in terms of performance and their ability to stop him and make life difficult on Lamar. So if they can do that to Lamar pretty consistently, are they able to do that to Jaden Daniels? I think they might be able to do that. I think on the other side, we'll see if Marshawn Lattimore is ready to go. That would make a major difference, in my opinion, just in matching up with George Pickens, because if they don't have Marshawn Lattimore, who's currently dealing with a hamstring injury, we don't know if it's a Devontae Adams hamstring injury or a Kevin Nash hamstring injury. Shout out to that meme. But I do think that the Steelers' offense has been a little bit better than people give it credit for. They're running the ball a bit better. I think Russ has definitely really been better for this offense. They're throwing the ball down the field. They're explosive a little bit more. So I'm gonna back the Steelers as a dog on the road, plus the 3, plus the 2.5, whatever you can get. And I just like the spot coming off a bye week here. So yeah, I'll take the Steelers. I think they're both these teams kind of feel like teams that will be eliminated from the playoffs relatively early, but I'll take the Steelers. This is going to be a close game. Good game. Coach became a member. About time. Big Al. Steelers 27. Commanders 24. Okay, relatively higher scoring for Mr. Big Al as well. Next up, we've got the Atlanta Falcons at the New Orleans Saints. This is a tricky game. I like the Falcons to win just because I think they're the better team. They just have more healthy players. They've been consistent. Their offense has been humming. They've been able to run the ball and throw the ball. The Saints defense has been dreadful. But there's always that thing about getting a new coach, right? Getting a new coach, getting a new sense of purpose, getting a new motivation with a new coach in there. Dennis Allen's out, new coach in. It's the new coach theory of these games, and that's a real thing in my opinion. I would also say that the Saints, when they played the first time around, they should have won this game. The first time they played, the Saints were relatively beat up. I remember backing the Falcons in that game, if I'm not mistaken, because of all the Saints injuries that they had. And the Saints, they allowed 2 defensive touchdowns in the game. The Falcons had 2 defensive touchdowns, and the Saints completely kind of dominated the yardage in the game. So I could see the Saints actually upsetting the Falcons here. The game is in New Orleans. But my problem that I'm having is that the Saints just don't have any weapons. Like, they don't have any receivers. Chris Olave's out. Rashid Shaheed's out. Like, I don't know who Derek Carr is throwing the ball to. That being said, the Falcons don't do a great job of rushing the passer. They didn't add anything at the trade deadline to their pass rush. So I think Derek Carr will have time. I think he'll be able to throw the ball. I think that he will be able to have a decent Derek Carr day because he won't be under constant duress. The Saints, it's tough to figure out which team's always going to appear with them. Alvin Kamara had a good game last week, but that didn't really matter in the long run. Their defense is still really struggling. They can't get after the quarterback. Cousins should have time. Drake London probably won't play in this game, which I think really does matter because this is a 2-receiver team. Like if Drake London does not play, it's really only Darnell Mooney. I'm not a huge Ray McLeod guy. I just don't really think he makes any difference. He's a replacement level receiver. Maybe Kyle Pitts gets more involved in the game plan. I think he had a really tough game in the first time they matched up, but he'll have to have a better game. So I'll take the Falcons to win, but I'm actually going to take the Saints to cover because, and maybe I'm stupid, but I just think new coach. They played the first time, and it was really a down-the-wire game. The Saints easily could have won, and I know that the Saints were a little bit healthier at the skill positions for that game. But then you factor in that game was in Atlanta. This game's in New Orleans. There's always the factor that the Saints always want to beat the Falcons. So I'll take the points +4, but I'll take the Falcons to win. Next up, the Buffalo Bills at the Indianapolis Colts. I've seen quite a few people actually picking the Colts here with the points, but I'm going to take the Bills to win and to cover. I just think they're a much better team. I know that there could be a possibility that they look ahead at the Chiefs, for this game because they play the Chiefs next week. That could be also a factor why you would take the Broncos, because the Chiefs want to be healthy when they play the Bills, because that's a big game in the AFC. But I'm going to take the Bills just because I don't believe in the Colts defense. I think their defensive line is solid. I think they've definitely been a lot better since DeForest Buckner came back. I thought Grover Stewart had a really strong game against the Vikings. But their secondary is susceptible. I think Amari Cooper will be back for this game. I don't really care if Coleman is playing or not. I don't think he makes a huge difference. People might think that. I don't really think so. I think it's Cooper who makes a difference. If Cooper's on the field, I know that the stats don't necessarily say that, but if you look at how Josh Allen and this offense has performed in those first couple of games with Cooper actually out on the field, it just makes everybody around him better, and it makes the passing game better. So I think Cooper will be out there. I don't really care about Coleman. I think Mac Hollins can do his role. I don't really care. The run game of the Bills, I think, will be probably solid, but not great in this game. But I think Josh Allen will have answers against a relatively basic Colts defense, and they don't have a great secondary, so I'll lean on Josh Allen there. On the other side, Flacco is a guy that I don't know, because like against the Vikings, he struggled. I think it was because the Colts couldn't really run the ball. I think my main thing that's bugging me here about the Colts is that their offensive line is really beat up. Like they put, I think Kelly's on IR. I think a couple other guys. Let me just check. I think their right tackle, Braden Smith, might also be out for this game, but they have a lot of offensive line injuries, which could really hurt them in this game just because Flacco can't really move. If he's getting pressured, it's going to be tough. The Bills have a good secondary. The Colts' run game hasn't been as good as you would think, especially with Flacco in there and not Richardson, because at least Richardson brings that legs dimension that helps their running game. So you look at their offensive line right now, Bernard Raymond is in red on RLads, which means he's currently injured. I don't know if he'll be active for this game. They have a backup center and a backup right guard. So right now, there's the possibility that only 2 of the 5 starters for the Colts offensive line is active, which is really going to hurt their passing game, I think, and even their running game, right? And then I think the Bills can match up with the receiving core of the Colts. So I could see the Colts making this competitive if they're able to run the ball with Jonathan Taylor, but I just don't think so. I just was not impressed against the Vikings, and I don't know, man. I don't think the Colts are very good. So I'll take the Bills to win and to cover, especially with those offensive line injuries and their secondary. It just makes me nervous. All right. Next up, we've got the Minnesota Vikings. Speaking of them, at the Jacksonville Jags, Vikings are favored by 4.5 at Jacksonville. I like Minnesota to win and to cover here. Jacksonville, I think, is going to have problems with the Vikings from both sides of the football. First, on offense, I think they'll have problems covering the Vikings. They're a man coverage team in Jacksonville that doesn't do a good job of playing man coverage, and now they get to face the guy that's probably the best receiver in the NFL against man coverage. And Jordan Addison himself is not bad against man coverage. You throw TJ Hawkinson in there. I think Sam Darnold will have a lot of chunk plays through the air. They'll mix in the run when they can. And I also think the Vikings defense bounced back in a big way last week against the Colts in a primetime spot. They looked much more like the Vikings. I think that their defense will blitz and berate Trevor Lawrence, who's dealing with an injury. And I just don't see how Jacksonville gets consistent offense here unless the Vikings pull an Eagles where they kind of just let the Jags get back in the game, right? Like that's basically what happened against the Eagles. I don't think Aaron Jones will backwards hurdle, right? But I just think that the Vikings front seven I just see a world where they're just after Lawrence consistently. They're just getting after him. Plus, I think Jacksonville has a couple injuries on their offensive line as well. Left guard, Ezra Cleveland. They did trade Cam Robinson, if that matters at all. And, of course, they don't have Christian Kirk anymore. I just think their offense is kind of dwindling. And if they're not able to consistently run the ball against the Vikings, which I don't think they'll be able to, I think they'll be stuck in a lot of 3rd and 7+ scenarios where Brian Flores really thrives with this defense, with the creativity, with the blitz packages, with the zone blitzes. I think that they get off the field on third down. It could be a Mac Jones game as well, which would be even better for the Vikings. So, yeah, give me the Vikings. -4.5. The Vikings to win, the Vikings to cover. They will throw the ball well and stop the pass well, and that's why they will win. All right. Next, the Tennessee Titans at the Los Angeles Chargers. I brought up earlier that I felt like the Titans offense actually been playing a little bit better than giving credit for with Mason Rudolph. Now, that being said, Will Levis could actually be the starting quarterback for this game, so look out for that. But this is a really solid Charger defense that continues to prove people wrong and play really good, solid football all the way around. Run defense, pass defense. They don't give up big plays. They get after the quarterback. Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa are in 2018 form. The Titans have gone for 400 yards in back-to-back weeks against the Lions and the Patriots, and I understand they got blown out by the Lions, but that was a lot to do with their special teams and the turnovers. But I think they've looked better, especially running the ball. But that being said, I like the Chargers, and I'm going to actually take them to win and to cover, just as Rob is as well. I'm not going to mess around here. Chargers are at home. This could be a similar game to the Cleveland game, where the Chargers don't necessarily just move the ball at will against a really good defense. But I think the Titans will screw it up for themselves. The Titans are very poor on special teams. They give up really good field position. That will help the Chargers. I think the Titans will turn the ball over, and I think they will be facing a very good pass rush on the road. And bad offensive lines don't travel well. They have a lot of issues at tackle this year, especially at right tackle. I think the Titans will give up pressures to Mack, give up pressures to Bosa. I think Herbert's playing absolutely phenomenal football. I think he'll find similar success that Drake May did in spurts there against the Titans too. So I'll take the Chargers to win and Chargers to cover. I wish this was at 7. I'd probably make it a best bet if it were at 7. At 7.5, it's a little bit trickier just because the Chargers aren't necessarily known for winning by multiple touchdowns. But they did do that last week against the Browns in a game that a lot of people thought the Browns could win. Next, we've got the Philadelphia Eagles at the Dallas Cowboys. Before we get to this big matchup in the NFC East, Big L says 27-17. Buffalo wins and covers. Rob says bolt up, Chargers win and cover. Big Al has also got the Falcons over the Saints 26-20. Atlanta wins and covers, but I won't be surprised if the Saints pull off the upset. Rob also likes the Vikings in the game against Jacksonville. Guys, if you haven't already, spike the like button. That's how more people find this video, find this channel, and find my picks. So share with the people. It's absolutely free to spike the like button and to subscribe. Now, for the Eagles and the Cowboys, I'm going to go with the Eagles to win and the Eagles to cover and probably decimate Dallas. Is there a chance that the Cowboys hang in there? Maybe they get a backup quarterback boost and they come out hungry. They're at home. They're playing a rival. They don't want to get embarrassed. Maybe if Micah Parsons and Diggs are playing and they get some of their defensive guys back, they could hang in the game. But I just don't like this matchup for Dallas in general. A.J. Brown is a question mark. Devontae Smith is a question mark for the Eagles. I'm assuming they'll play, but I'm not sure. I like how Jalen Hurts is playing. He's not turning it over as frequently lately. I think the offensive line of the Eagles will bully Dallas up front. I think Saquon will have a huge game. I think they'll run the ball at will. And I think that will just wear down Dallas's defense into the second half where they're able to go on long drives. And you know how the Eagles are. Once they get that ball into your end of the field, they've got 4 downs to play with. They just run the ball, tush push, run the ball, tush push, run the ball, tush push, all the way down the field until they score. And that could very well happen. On top of that, if Dallas sells out for the run and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith have one-on-ones, we've seen Jalen Hurts consistently convert on those passes. And Dallas's offense, I mean, you think about it, I don't think this is going to be the successful Cooper rush that we've seen in the past because I think that this team was entirely dependent on Dak and CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee's beat up and Dak is out. And with the current state of the offensive line, with the current state of the run game for Dallas, I just don't see how they are able to overcome this. You know, usually Dallas has a great all-around team, a lot of talent. They've got a good defense to rely on. They've got a run game to rely on. They've got an O-line that can protect your backup quarterback. This year, none of that is really true. It's really like Dak has to ball out or you're going to lose. And the defense, has to be a kind of lucky because they have not been good really all year. So I just think the Eagles are tiers above this Cowboys team. This Cowboys team is one of the worst teams without Dak and CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons. Those are the three best players on their team. So I'll take the Eagles to win, the Eagles to cover pretty decisively. Big Al's got 31-17. Eagles win and Eagles cover. And he also says the Chargers are the lock of the week. Next up. By the way, Big Al's been hitting on his locks of the week pretty good. Jets at the Cardinals. Cardinals are favored by 1. This one's tough because on one side, I think the Cardinals have been outdoing expectations consistently, and they've actually played a really tough slate of schedule, a really tough opponent, pretty much weekly. But at the same time, the Jets looked really good against the Texans. They're coming off extended rest, and they looked like they might be figuring some things out, while the Cardinals played, I think, an overrated Bears team and had their best game of the season where they could be at the peak of their market, while the Jets might be a little bit underrated because they've had that 10-day rest. They went through an absolute gauntlet at the beginning of the year in terms of like primetime game after primetime game after primetime game, playing in London. Like they had a lot of terrible schedule spots. Like my brain says take the Jets, but I also don't want to because the Jets have kind of underwhelmed and they've kind of annoyed me all season because it feels like I've been high on the Jets, but they haven't come through in the spots that I picked them, you know what I mean? So it's kind of annoying me, but I'm going to take the Jets because I think this is a solid matchup for them. I think the Cardinals, the reason the Cardinals can win is if the Cardinals can run the ball. I think if they can run the ball successfully, consistently, I think that they can win this game and they can control the pace of the game. But the reason I like the Jets is they've had that extended rest. They've had an ability to maybe self-scout a little bit, implement Davante Adams into their offense. And if you really think about the Jets offense, I think it's going to be tough for the Cardinals to defend them. Considering, the Cardinals, they're a blitz-heavy team. They show a lot of creative looks up front. And I feel like Rodgers is one of the smartest quarterbacks in the league. His offense is very stagnant, but he likes it that way so he can see the picture and see what's around him and the rush that's coming and point out the blitzers and point out the guys that may or may not be coming on a blitz. And I think that can confuse Caleb Williams, but I don't think that can confuse Aaron Rodgers. So if you give him good matchups with Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams with an underwhelming Cardinals secondary, I think he's going to pick on those matchups and have a pretty good day in this game. I also think that the Cardinals are a little susceptible to the run at times. They did a good job against the Bears. They've done good jobs in spurts here, but I don't think they're consistently stopping the run. So I think the Jets should be able to hit some explosives down the field through the passing game, which we've seen more of those since Davante's been added to the team. And I do think they'll get some good runs out of Breece Hall. I also think their defense in the passing game will win the matchup against Kyler Murray because I think they've got the corners to cover Marvin Harrison. They've got fast linebackers to chase Kyler Murray and to cover Trey McBride. And I think their pass defense will hold up. The biggest concern for the Jets is going to be their run defense. That's going to be the biggest concern. But this feels like a bigger game for the Jets, and it feels like a game where the Cardinals might just slip up and lose. So I'll fade the Cardinals here after their big win against the Bears. Next up, Sunday Night Football, the Detroit Lions at the Houston Texans. This is the thumbnail, guys. This is the game of the week, in my opinion. It's a team that I thought would be a contender in the AFC. Things haven't exactly worked out their way, but they still maintain a pretty solid position to win their division for sure and make the playoffs. And they just haven't been healthy as of late. The Detroit Lions, meanwhile, are my number one ranked team in my power rankings based on how they are currently playing. I think they're the most well-rounded team in football with great balance. This game could truly go either way. It's a CJ Stroud as a dog, 10-day rest. Nico Collins could be back, which may be the toughest test the Lions have faced for a minute, just considering the quarterback and the potential of Tank Dell and Nico Collins out there. Now, the Texans have been unable to solve their offensive line issues. Now, the question will be, can the Lions expose that? They added Zadarius Smith, but their pass rush hasn't exactly been amazing lately. Aleem McNeil's been really good, but outside of that, I don't really feel like they've been pressuring quarterbacks at a great rate. And the Texans defense is really, really solid. They rank top 10 in a lot of different categories. They rank top 2 in plays allowed per drive, time of possession allowed per drive. They're a good defense. I do think you can run on the Texans a little bit, and I do think that they're aggressive. They've got a really good pass rush, but if you can buy some time against them, I do think you can make some plays happen down the field. So can the Lions block Will Anderson, who's been a bit beat up, but been amazing this year? Danielle Hunter, who's been phenomenal this year. Danico Autry had 2 sacks against the Jets. Their pass rush is really nasty. This might be the best pass rush that the Lions have faced all season. Probably is, to be honest. So this is going to be a great matchup, and it's also in Houston. So yeah, this makes for a great game. I like the Texans getting 3.5 in this type of spot because everybody thinks they suck now because they lost to the Jets. You know, when you really think about it, yeah, sure, they didn't play very well, but still, when you think about how the Jets won the game, they had basically a Hail Mary touchdown to Garrett Wilson that was one of the most ridiculous catches you've ever seen. They scored a touchdown late in the game, and those were like their 2 touchdowns. Corley did drop the ball, but then Fairbairn missed two field goals that he never misses. He never misses kicks. And they're very beat up. So I think this could depend on the Texans' injuries. I feel like if Nico Collins plays, the Texans should be able to cover here. I feel like Al-Shaair could be back, who's a really important player to the Texans' defense. I don't think... Let me see if any of the information is out on that yet. I think Nico should be back this week, but I don't 100% know. So yeah, we've got do not practices for Will Anderson, Derek Barnett, Fatou Kazi. Kenyon Green actually being out for the Texans might actually be a good thing, to be honest, because he's terrible. Al-Shaair was limited. That's a good sign. And also Jimmy Ward was limited. That's also a good sign. Those 2 players have been out for a while. So I could see Ward, the middle of the field, right? Ward and Al-Shaair coming back could be major difference makers. I don't really know why. I kind of think the Texans are going to win. I don't really know why, other than Stroud just stepping up with his receivers and being able to throw the ball against a team that likes to play a lot of man coverage. And I don't think anybody in the NFL can cover Nico Collins in man coverage. So I'm actually going to take the Texans here. I know that the Lions are the best team in the league. I think that, but the best teams in the league lose some games. So I'll take the Texans. I'll take the upset. Why not? It will be my one upset. I don't really think I've picked an upset yet. I guess the Jets, but they were like 1-point dogs. I don't think I've picked an upset regardless. So I guess that will be my upset pick. I'll take the Texans at home on prime. Oh, the Steelers. I took the Steelers. Okay. I took a couple upsets. Monday Night Football. We might have to pick another upset because I like the Miami Dolphins in this game. I was really impressed by Miami, and I was not impressed by the Rams last week. I was impressed by Miami. I had Bills minus the points, and somehow the Bills didn't cover. And the Dolphins could have won that game if Bass does not kick a 61-yard field goal, but also Corey Coleman caught a perfect slant for a touchdown that landed into an interception. That was pretty depressing. But the Rams should have lost to the Seahawks. I mean, I'm not even going to lie. Like, that was super fortunate. Geno Smith and the Seahawks drove into the red zone multiple times. One ended up being a pick 6, and the other one ended up being an interception. Stafford wasn't particularly good. Puka Nacua got ejected. Cooper Kupp looked slow. And the defense of the Rams, I will say their pass rush looked really good, but I don't think they'll look as good against the Dolphins front that's healthy. Their O-line is playing pretty good. I thought they blocked the Bills pretty well. I'm going to take the Dolphins. I think that when you look at the teams, I mean, they're relatively similar in terms of talent. I think I would even argue the Dolphins maybe have more talent. Maybe the Rams can run the ball here, but I was really impressed by Miami's run game against Buffalo as well. I like their new sort of offensive approach where they're kind of like, they're throwing the ball quick, they're running the ball well, and they're kind of making teams collapse on that, and that's opening up Tyreek, down the field. And honestly, like, I don't know how the Rams are going to cover the receivers of the Dolphins here. I think Tua's played well when he's played this year for the most part. I thought he played really well against Buffalo, which is a matchup and a team that he usually struggles against. And again, like, the Dolphins defense is solid. It's had some bad games, but overall, I think they've been very good against the pass. I think they were better against the run than I would have expected against Buffalo. I thought they were going to get ran over, but that wasn't necessarily the case. So, yeah, I mean, I think the Dolphins are just underrated because they haven't had Tua for most of the year. That's basically it, but I'll take the Dolphins here. I think the Rams are kind of due for a setback because they've been a little fortunate the last couple of games. So I'm going to take Miami with a slight upset. They're getting a point. Yeah. So we'll see if the Rams could show up, though. Puka Nacua is a big factor. Puka Nacua is a weird one because he got ejected last week, but before his ejection, he was injured entering the game, and he looked awful. And then this week, he's still, I think, dealing with an injury. We'll see if he'll be able to hold up and play at his peak level, because obviously Puka Nacua made all the difference against the Vikings. And without him, I just don't think the Rams are the same team, or him not at 100%. I don't think they're the same offense or the same team. So, and the Dolphins do have healthy weapons and a healthy O-line. Rob says Rams win. Big Al says Dolphins 28, Rams 20. Okay. And what else? Lions 27, Texans 23. For Big Al, Detroit wins and covers. This is my game of the week. And Big Al says he's 7-2 in his lock picks. Jordan says, I hope the Texans can get it together, but I can't pick them right now. That's fair enough. I'm going out on a limb with that one for sure. So yeah, those are my picks, guys. Appreciate you all tuning in. Spike the like button, subscribe. My best bets will be out on Thursday, so make sure to check that out. I'm still deciding on a couple of them, but I have a pretty good idea, and maybe you have a pretty good idea where I'm going with some of them. Thank you guys for watching. Pay attention to those injury reports, man. Become a member of the channel. Support your boy. Become a patron if you want all of my bets. Links in the description, all right? Those are where you get Patreon. We actually did really well last week and the week before. So we've actually been winning money the last couple of weeks on Patreon. So check that out. Link in the description. Peace, guys.